Welcome to the show, Lexi. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Lexi, I am so impressed with your background. I read a little bit about your backstory before you started acting, but basically that you kind of figured out when you were 5 years old and
Yeah.
told your parents that you wanted to be an actress. Can you talk a little bit about, well, first, what a gift it is to know what you want to do at such a young age. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
you're still young, and to know what you want to do at such a young age when so many people are your age now and still trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. So can you talk a little bit about how you knew you wanted to be an actress and then how you got started in acting?
Yeah, for sure. As you said, it's a massive blessing to know what you want to do at such a young age. Like, I still have friends who have no idea, and like in my little grateful journal, I'll write down I'm grateful I know what I want to do, and I have an audition today. Like those are things that I'm super grateful for. But I figured out that I really loved it. Actually, it was kind of an accident. When I was younger, this is also the story my parents tell me because I don't remember this, obviously, but I would, kind of walk around the house and sing, and any single song I could sing, I would just be singing all the time. So my parents wanted to kind of give me an outlet to be able to explore that. And
Mhm.
I grew up in Maine, so there aren't many things that I can get into that help me kind of explore it. So they put me into music, they put me into voice lessons. And then when I was in voice lessons, that same company also did musical theater. So they said, "Oh, like, would you want to do a play?" And after a lot of me saying no, I finally said yes. And I was like, okay. And I did my first play and I fell in love with it. I was like, "Mom, anything that we can do where I can just be doing this, like, I really want to do it." And then
Mhm.
kind of did that for a few years throughout middle school and high school. And then after high school, I applied to SUNY Purchase in New York for
Mhm.
college because I was like, I'm going here. I don't want to go anywhere else. like,
Mhm.
so I applied there, got in. And then one of my uncles came to visit and he said, "Well, would you consider taking a year off and just coming out to LA and kind of experiencing it?" And I said, "Okay." So I came out, met with a few agents and managers. I got signed. I got signed to an agent and a manager, and then booked The Young and the Restless, and now here I am.
So I want to talk about The Young and the Restless in a minute because you won you were nominated for an Emmy for the work that you did on Young and Restless, again at a young age, because it was
Yeah,
a few years ago. But before we get into that, you also sing. So, right? So
yeah.
how do you think about both of those things, right? The singing and the acting, in terms of the way you look at your career? Are you thinking about pursuing both, or are you mostly focused on one part of it?
For a long time, I was focused just on acting. I'm not shy, so that's the worst word to use to describe myself, but I'm shy when it comes to sharing music, I guess. But recently I've kind of come out of that bubble a little bit, which is awesome. But
Mhm.
I kind of see them as, different. They're obviously different careers, but my mom, she was a doctor and a lawyer, so I'm like, why can't I be both? So,
Wow.
yeah, so it's kind of my viewpoint on it.
Well, and I love that. I love that you said that, because it is such a gift to have a parent who can be that living
Yeah,
example for you, that you don't have to choose just one thing. And you have so
100%.
much runway ahead of you, right? So many years ahead of you. So I mentioned that you mentioned you were on The Young and the Restless. You booked that pretty early in your stay out in LA, in your time out in
Yeah,
LA. And then you received an Emmy nomination for it. What
yeah.
is that like as an actor, to get that kind of recognition for the work that you do, the stuff, what you put your heart and soul into every day?
It's massive. I think this industry is filled with a lot of rejection, and
Mm,
when you finally feel seen and
mhm.
that someone is recognizing you and saying, "Hey, you did a good job," I think any creative, we're really, really hard on ourselves,
Mhm.
and it can be really difficult. So when you get that, it kind of gives you there are a lot of days where me and I know tons of other creators don't want to keep going. We're like, "Oh my lord, is this ever gonna happen?" That happens a lot. So for
Mhm.
me, when that happened, it was like, "Oh wow, like I can actually do this. Like I
Mhm.
have what it takes and I can do it. This is, and it's a confirmation, validation that I think as a human you need sometimes. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's also it's you do work in an industry that is so much about rejection, as you said. It is a gift, a wonderful thing to be able to
yeah.
have people recognize you for what you're doing. So if you think about then too, so you're working hard, you are getting recognition for it, and then you have this almost near death experience that sort of shifts things and changes things. Can you talk a little bit about your diagnosis,
Yeah.
and what it means first? So just so we can make sure people understand what it means. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so endometriosis is a disease where women naturally have endometrial tissue in their uterus, and that's where the egg sticks to, and that's how we're able to fertilize and all that stuff. So my endometrial tissue, and all women who have endometriosis, that endometrial tissue grows outside of the uterus, and endometrial tissue is super super sticky. So the issue with that is that it kind of acts like a glue. So let's say, your large intestine gets stuck to or gets stuck to the small intestine. And then as your body naturally moves and you're shifting throughout the day, you end up getting cramps because those are pulling away. And then you end up getting these like blisters, kind of. That's one way that it can be painful. There are a lot of other ways. I'm speaking from my experience, and that's in the way that it hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I got my diagnosis, I actually didn't know that I didn't know I was having a near death experience when I was, which was pretty lucky, because it didn't stress me out, I think, in the way that it obviously would have had I known.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I woke up, I knew something was wrong because I was in a lot of pain. But I think by that time I'd been dealing with it for about 4 years, so I built a pain tolerance to it.
Yeah.
But when I
Mm-hmm.
woke up, the doctor told me and showed me pictures that of my endometrial tissue severing off a lateral portion of my small intestine. And my
Wow.
body luckily repaired itself. So it looks a little funky, but it did repair itself, and it didn't create a blockage, luckily. So, it was good, but I also wasn't good because then I also had this kind of golf ball size of intestine just floating around in my stomach. But yeah, no, and then I just woke up. I was very thankful for my body and for it to be strong enough to like heal me on its own, basically. So I was like, oh, that was very lucky.
So you mentioned that you had been dealing with the pain but undiagnosed. So you didn't know you had endometriosis until
No.
this experience where it got so severe, that you finally were able to get the diagnosis. But what are some of the symptoms? Because you said that you had been in pain for 4 years prior to this happening. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what some of the symptoms are, so that maybe if another woman's listening to this, they can be on the lookout? Because I also think, just what I know of many women, is that we have a pretty high tolerance for pain. So if you
Right.
could talk a little bit about what some of those symptoms might be, in the hopes that it might be useful to somebody else.
Yeah. I would describe it honestly. It The symptoms can replicate the very early stages of pregnancy pretty almost identically. For
Mm.
some women, obviously pregnancy is different for a lot of people, but uh, I would say irregular bleeding was a huge one for me.
Mhm.
Kind of a cramps, but they aren't period cramps. They're almost like they are a little bit higher, and because what those cramps are obviously in the intestines, so they can kind of be anywhere.
Mhm.
Um, I'd say that I would say I have endometriosis attacks. So what a huge thing for me was is that I would be having what I thought was these really severe period cramps off of my period, but
Mhm.
it wasn't my period. So I
Mhm.
would, sometimes end up in the hospital, and there was
Mm.
no amount of uh I think that was actually when I had finally decided to go to the Boston Children's Hospital, was when
Mhm.
they had given me 2 doses of my mom, when my parents were bringing me in, so like I said, my mom's a doctor, she had given me a Tylenol 3, like, before that I had an Advil or something, and then she gave me a Tylenol 3. And then when I went in, they then gave me 2 doses of morphine. And with how much I weighed at the time, because I was in high school, I should have been not like, they were like, we were really hoping this would knock her out, like put me, make me
Mm.
sleepy. And I just
Mhm.
was sitting there and I was still in a lot of pain. And I think that
Mhm.
was kind of the point where everyone's like, okay, there's something going on.
Mhm. So you said that you talked before about how you've had difficulty obtaining a diagnosis. Can you talk about that experience and how you eventually received the diagnosis correctly and the treatment?
Yeah. So endometriosis is very difficult to diagnose. You could do, I believe it's an MRI. You could do it with an MRI, but at that point, the endometriosis would have to be pretty severe for it to even show up. And even
Mm.
then, like, not all of the areas would show up. You don't really, it's hard to pick up. The only way to really diagnose endometriosis is through exploratory surgery, and a lot of people don't want to do that. But that's, I kind of had to have that because they weren't going in looking for endometriosis. I had a growth on my ovary that they needed to remove.
Mm.
And just while they were in there, he was like, "Whoa, there's a lot of endometriosis in here." So then, while they were in there, they removed it, but unfortunately, every time you remove endometriosis, it grows back twice as bad over time. So you
Mm.
really only want to have like 2 surgeries in your lifetime.
Hmm. So this is in terms of the experience, the way you were actually diagnosed was because they were already needing to remove something else that they had seen on your ovary and
Yeah.
got in there and figured it out. I mean, I had no idea that
Yeah.
endometriosis was so difficult
Yeah.
to diagnose. You'd think, I have definitely known
Yeah.
many women who've told me that they've dealt with endometriosis with varying degrees.
Right.
I've definitely heard of women tell me that it is debilitating when they cannot. It makes it incredibly difficult for them to function. So I
Right.
know that there's also a spectrum of that. In terms of treatment, is it ongoing treatment that people get for this type of diagnosis?
So a lot of people have very different kind of opinions on what treatment looks like for them or what it should be for the world. I think for me, I'm still kind of trying. I'm still trying to figure it out. I actually have a doctor's appointment with a new endo doctor coming up, but a lot of the time, unfortunately, because of the abuse of, because it's not there is no real treatment. It's more pain management is
Mm.
really what it is,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But a lot of doctors do not like to prescribe narcotics, and
Mhm.
that makes sense because of the abuse that goes on. But there are also people like me and many other women who actually need those medications, and
Mhm.
it can be very, very, very difficult to get prescribed. And like, My mom, she also has endometriosis, and I remember growing up, she had to go through, especially because she was also a doctor, she had to go through psych evaluations a lot just so she could keep up those
Mhm.
prescriptions so that she wasn't in pain, she could be a mom, you know?
So because endometriosis sounds like it is not the easiest thing to diagnose, in some cases,
Right.
requiring exploratory surgery to determine if you have it. Do you have advice for women who know that something is wrong, but they have these different obstacles in trying to get a diagnosis?
Yeah, 100%. I was told for 4 years that it was in my head, I wasn't getting enough attention at home.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it's getting a lot better, but a lot of doctors don't have the knowledge about what this is. I also grew up in Maine, so it wasn't, we're not cut off from the rest of the world, but, it was a little bit more remote. But I always say you know your body better than anyone else, even your
Mhm.
doctor. And like again, having my
Mhm.
mom as a doctor, she always instilled that in me. She was like, "Listen, if I don't know what's going on with, a patient, she's always going to tell them because she doesn't want to be sitting here saying, okay, well, it could be this, it could be that, just to, get them off her back. She's like, I don't know what it
Mhm.
is. You need to go see somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always trusted doctors more when they tell
Mm.
me that they don't know, instead of kind of dismissing it as, okay, can't handle pain, or whatever.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so I always say, if you know that there is something wrong, then there's probably, if you know something's not right with your body, then there's probably not something right. And if you're with a doctor who's telling you it's in your head, then it's time to find a new doctor. You got to break
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like too, just learning to be an advocate for yourself when it comes to your
Yeah,
health, which
100%.
I think can be hard, especially the younger you are. It can be hard to feel like you are in a position to say to the doctor,
Yeah,
"Hey, this like I need to get a different answer here because I know
right,
myself and I know what's going on."
right.
Um, so you are the youngest woman on the advisory board for endometriosis. How did that opportunity come about? And can you talk a little bit about the kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, I on The Young and the Restless, and some of my fans had noticed that I was in the hospital. I had posted like a picture on Snapchat. It was like some funny photo, and people were like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And a few weeks later, I posted on my blog, kind of saying, "Hey, like I have endometriosis," and it blew up. And
Mm,
the Endometriosis Foundation of America sent me I sent my manager or my agent or my manager at the time sent them an email and said we'd love to have her come to the Blossom Ball and, kind of be within a community that would support her.
mhm,
And I said, of course. So I flew out to New York. I went to the Blossom Ball, and so many women who I've looked up to I mean, a huge one was Haley Baldwin. Like it was super.
mhm,
She doesn't have endometriosis, but her sister does. And many, many other amazing women were just speaking about their experience, and I had no idea. Like, I had
mhm,
no idea
mhm,
that any of these people were experiencing this or had it in their lives or were having to deal with it or any of that stuff. And I went up to the creative director and I said, I have to be a part of this. Please,
mhm,
like, what can I do? I will
mhm,
do anything. And they said, she said, let me get back to you when you're back in LA and we'll talk about it. And then she sent me an email and she said, would you like to have a chair on the advisory board? And
mhm.
I was like, what? Like, of course I'd like to do that. That's crazy. That was really, really, really exciting. And that kind of ever since then, I help raise awareness, of course. I help fundraise through charity events. We're working on one right now that even involves my boyfriend and some of his old teammates, to kind of get men more involved as well, because I think it's important for men to know how to support women when they're, going through this. And Chris, my boyfriend, is like nuts good at it. So I was
That's
like, yeah,
amazing.
want to get some other people um involved.
Yeah. So what are important things that you want people to know as you're educating them about endometriosis?
I think the number one thing is that if you think you if you're showing symptoms of it and you feel like you have it, then 110% explore that, and don't, do be an advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up, because I know sometimes it can be intimidating when this doctor has had years and years and years of schooling, but you also have to think, however old you are, you've had X amount of years in your body, so you're going to know it better than anybody. And I think having that viewpoint is a little easier. And also experiencing with diets and stuff as well. Like, I cut gluten out of my diet. That's been a huge, like, miracle changer for me. The second I have gluten, I'm in a endo attack probably about an hour later. But
Interesting. Okay. So diet related items.
Yeah, and I have some friends where it'll be milk that sets it off, or even red meat. I mean, those things luckily don't set it off for me because I love my ice cream and my steak.
Yeah.
But I also love bread, so it kind of sucks I can't have gluten. But it is what it is.
So
yeah.
So what are some of the misconceptions that you think people have about endometriosis?
The biggest one is that it's contagious, or that it's an STD. That's a massive misconception, that, and it doesn't hurt to ask the question. I just think sometimes it can be, I've been in situations where it's been super offensive, like, oh, you have an STD. No, I have a disease that, it's not just because, you're intimate with me does not mean that you're all of a sudden going to have endometrial tissue, especially, not even especially, no matter who you are, boy, girl, it does not matter. If we're intimate, you're not gonna have endometrial tissue growing inside. Like, it's something that's, I actually don't know if it's hereditary, but, I think that's why I got it, since my mom has it. But yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that people had this misconception that it was a sexually transmitted disease. So
yeah.
but that is, I'm glad that we have had a chance to clarify that it is not the case. To me, I think now about, you are clearly somebody who has dealt with and learned how to deal with the symptoms of this thing that is an ongoing, right? It's something that you deal with on an ongoing basis. You are working. What is your best advice for women as they are trying to deal with something less like this, or getting a diagnosis of endometriosis? Like, what should they be thinking about or doing as they embark on maybe their own journeys?
Yeah, I would say self-care is huge. That looks different for everybody. I have a 5-minute journal that I do every morning. I work out every single day except for the weekends. And, like, I'm not saying anybody has to go that hard, but for me, that, it looks different for everybody, and that helps. That helps me a lot. Working out also is a huge pain management thing for me. And then another thing I always say is have your endometriosis emergency kit, because that has been a lifesaver for me. And even my boyfriend, like, I'll be like, okay, get the endo kit, and he's got the heat pad, he's got the Tylenol, he's got the tea, like, and it's and it's there. But definitely, if you get diagnosed with that, then always and have gluten-free snacks, or whatever diet you require, have those types of snacks, because sometimes when you get hungry, you don't eat like you should sometimes, and then that can also induce attacks. So
yeah, and I love that you do the journaling. You mentioned, I think now a couple times, that you journal, and I think one of the things that I have been hearing, we actually just had somebody on the show who is very much involved in the pain management, trying to help evolve the pain management industry. And one of the things she said is, you have to be your own best investigator and writing
Yeah.
things down, like to figure out when something
Right.
happens, because doctors, as we've talked about, it's, you know, endometriosis in particular, it's a very hard thing to diagnose. There are lots of other things out there that are also hard to diagnose. And
Right.
we need to kind of shift how we think about this as women, that we have
Right.
to help with that investigation. What's next for
Exactly.
you?
Well, I am working on a project that I'm not quite ready to say much about yet, but
Okay.
that will be coming up pretty shortly, which I'm pretty excited for. And honestly, I don't know exactly, but I'm excited to see. I have a good feeling about 2022, and
That's
I just
awesome.
feel I feel like these are it's my Jordan year too, so here we go.
Yeah. I love, wait, tell everyone what a Jordan year is.
So I'm 23 and Michael Jordan, his number was 23.
Yep.
So, I didn't know that until I met my boyfriend. He goes, "Oh yeah, you're in your Jordan year." I'm like, "I don't know what that means." He goes, "Do you know who Michael Jordan is?" I was like, "I mean, kind of." He goes, "Do you know what number he was?" I said, "No."
Well, the only
Ah,
reason I know that is because I watched that documentary that they just had about Michael
yes.
Jordan. It's the only
I
reason
caught
I
because
knew that.
yeah, no, he was watching it and I caught little snippets of it, which, some parts were super, super interesting. I was like, wow, I don't know anything about basketball, but that's cool.
So, so if people want to follow you and watch your journey, what is the best way for them to do that?
Definitely on Instagram, and it's just my name, Lexi Stevenson is my handle. Yeah, I post a lot of random stuff, but it's a good
I love it. And
it's my
I
page.
know
Yeah.
I know I mentioned this earlier. We are both dog lovers, and I love, you had a post up about you have two dogs, right? Boo and
Yes.
Bella, and one of them you rescued from the side of the road, right?
Yes, I did. My sweet Bella. Yeah, it was actually very crazy. 2 days prior to that, Chris and I were saying, "Oh, like, we wanted a female German Shepherd." And then 2 days later, we were driving down the highway, and this dog was just and I couldn't even tell what kind of dog it was. For all I knew, it could have been a coyote, I don't know. And it was just swerving in and out of cars, and I was like, "Oh my god, Chris, pull over," so we kinda chased her off of the highway, and, she started going into these, into neighborhoods, and we had King in the car, Boo, we call Boo, we had him in the car, and I was just kind of had his food and was trying to get her to come into the car, and she, wouldn't. But then this guy in the neighborhood, we were in a really bad part of town, and he took
Mm.
a gun out and he said, "Oh, that's a canine. Like, I have to kill this dog." And he took the gun out and I was about to shoot Bella. And I just was like, there's no way this is happening right now, but I had to save her. So I just was like, Chris goes, "Lexi, don't do it." Like, he's like, don't pick up the dog. Cause we didn't know, she might not be friendly. But I picked her up and she didn't do anything. She just stayed super still. I put her in the back of the car. We got her checked for a chip to see, whatever, 'cause she didn't have a collar on. Not that I'm sure I would have wanted her to go back to where she came from, because she had obviously not been treated well at all.
Mhm.
The tips of her
Mhm.
ears were missing. She had
Oh.
heartworm, uterus infection.
Mm.
But that's all taken care of now. And now she's just the sweetest, 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 sweetest dog. And she reminds me every day that when she went through the shits of it, but is still
Mm.
really happy and is like the most jolly dog I've ever seen before in my life. So she reminds me to keep a positive attitude.
I mean, wow, you just made me tear up because I am a
Oh.
big fan of dog rescue. Yeah, I have a few of my own I've rescued. So, and I am that crazy
Yeah.
person also that would jump out in the road and
Yes,
push them
no,
off.
I was like, "Sir, you are not about to shoot this dog." I was like, "Get in the
Oh
car,
my
Bella."
God. I cannot believe you did that. I can't, I mean, that's just a crazy story. You need to write about that. Like people,
Yeah, probably.
yes, get it onto
I
the
love
dodo.
dogs. I'm like, I will literally I said, "You're gonna shoot me before you shoot this dog." Like, there's no way.
Oh my God, I love it. I love that you did that. That's what a gift. So, Lexi, thank you so much for
Of
spending the time
course.
today and sharing your story.
Of course, I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.